cop on the beat in a broadband world with regard to carrier and carrier disputes. You know, let's take interconnection, for instance. Now, the 1996 Telecom Act made it very clear that carriers have an obligation to interconnect with one another in most instances. We help carriers with interconnection in a number of states across the country. Well, there's one large RBOC, and you know, I won't mention who, but their initials are Fairpoint, who in another state, I had to contact them, I'm not making this up by the way, 37 times through phone calls and emails. I ultimately had to reach out to some contacts with the Illinois Commerce Commission, their PUC, before we could get any substantive response. Now that is, I mean, that sort of, you know, forever kind of process took place under the auspices of a highly regulated and mandated obligation they had to interconnect. So when you get away from the 96 Telecom Act framework and you start to go to a transfer, a handoff of internet traffic, and there isn't that kind of obligation, how much more are they going to ignore me now? And I don't mind being ignored. It's the clients that we work for that I get nervous. When they really need to get that traffic to the broader world, and they can't get somebody from a large RBOC to pay any attention to them. There's that much of an asymmetry in market power. And I think we've got to ask ourselves, well then, who is the cop on the beat? The FCC made it clear in their open internet order that the open internet rules do not apply to internet exchange of traffic. They said maybe in the future they will, but at this point we're going to leave that space sort of unfilled with the open internet rules. And so is there a role for state regulators in the future, as there is today, with arbitrating some of these carrier-to-carrier disputes? The second key question I'd like us to keep in mind today is who's the cop on the beat with regard to provider versus consumer disputes. And I'll make it clear, everybody on the last panel, I think, did a nice job of talking about that being an important role for at the state level. Not everybody in every state feels that way. And so I think you've seen a real rollback of that kind of consumer regulatory approach. I think, and this is just my opinion, I think quality of service still needs to matter in the broadband world. And if you've got state commissions who can't have anything to do with quality of service because that's done with an IP basis rather than with some sort of a TDM basis, I don't know where that leaves us. So you've got an old style connection and now government cares about your quality. You've got a new age connection and maybe they don't care so much. You know, I think the goals of the Broadband Task Force are fantastic, but even if they are met, you know, that's talking about one provider in some of those places. I mean, even if we can get 100 meg to every place in Minnesota, it's going to be a long, long time before that's a non-monopoly service. I think for decades, people are going to feel lucky in parts of rural Minnesota to be able to get one broadband connection, much less many. And so when you're dealing with a monopoly service, a de facto monopoly, perhaps there is more of a role to have right-sized a state regulatory approach. I alluded earlier to how, as a father, I've grown accustomed to an eroding base of power. And so as I'll share a story from Saturday with you.